Okay, so discussion on the questions related to Frankenstein. The first question, number one, in the first excerpt, we read of Frankenstein's initial reservations about creating a human being. What motivated Frankenstein to continue with his project? Right. Now, if you go to your anthology and to page 8, right, you can highlight there, and as I said to you, I'm now spoon feeding you for this first tutorial on the first novel, and thereafter you're now going to get into groups and you're going to work out these questions yourself, but then you know exactly what is expected of you, right? Because remember what I said to you, where your essay is concerned, if you're just giving opinions and you are not substantiating from the text, you are not going to do well. Remember we read all those style, the elementary thing in the study guide on page, the categories, certificate categories, page 7. Okay, so if you want to remind yourself about that, you can go back to page 7, the certificate categories. All right. Okay, so I would highlight here, yet when I considered the improvement which every day takes place in science and mechanics, I was encouraged to hope my present attempts would at least lay the foundations of future success. Right, so that would be your motivation. The answer then to that question would be his attempts would lay the foundation of future success. Okay. And he also mentions later on, where I've actually got a 2 next to this, but it's actually part of 2 and 1. Okay, it answers both questions. In that the other attempt, part of this quotation you could use would be, a new species would bless me as its creator and source. And that's the second paragraph on page 8. A new species would bless me as its creator and source. In other words, what was the other driving factor if he's saying that? Fame. Fame. Not necessarily fortune, because that's not what he was after. That's not what was driving him at all. It was the fact that he would be regarded as an expert in this field and have done something that no one had ever done on Earth. Okay. Okay, this is quite a controversial question. Do you think that one needs to be egotistical? You need to be egotistical in order to achieve something really great. Okay, let's go back to the, I'm going to go, what's the definition of egotistical? Let's go back. What's the definition of egotistical? Your ego, in other words, infatuated with yourself. Okay. There is an element of people who do incredible things in that they are so driven that they're only driven in that area and they ignore everything besides that. You with me? Think of an Olympic athlete, right? Their families sometimes suffer. Okay. One of my friends was married to an Olympic triathlete, and whether it was her birthday, whether it was Valentine's Day, Christmas Day, he's up and off on his bike at 4 in the morning. That's it, for 5 hours at a time. Okay, no breakfast in bed, he's on the bike. Is that egotistical? No. I'm asking the question because some people may see it as egotistical in that you're so driven. Oh, is that dedicated? That's not what his wife thinks. You with me? What does she think? She thinks he's neglecting me. All right? Or there's an element of that. She understands that he's driven in this area, but still deep down she feels, really, do you have to do this on my birthday or Christmas or what have you? Okay? So be careful with labeling someone as egotistical because one needs an ego. If you don't have an ego, you don't have drive. But again, balance. It depends to what degree there is ego and what the driving factor is. Okay, so be aware of that. Right, so that would be the answer to question 1. Right, question 2 states, as Frankenstein becomes preoccupied with creating his man, how does his undertaking affect his life? Right. Now, if you go to page 10. Okay, actually no, there's on page 8. In the second paragraph, the last line of that second paragraph, you can highlight there. I might in process of time, although I now found it impossible, renew life where death had apparently devoted the body to corruption. Okay, so that's what was driving him. Okay, so that's why you need to highlight that, right? And then I want you to go to page 10. And on page 10, second paragraph, halfway down, okay, highlight this whole section, but my enthusiasm, halfway through that paragraph. Everyone got it? Page 10, love, page 10, halfway through the second paragraph. Okay, cool. And it starts off with, but my enthusiasm was checked by my anxiety, and I appeared rather like one doomed by slavery to toil in the mines, or any other unwholesome trade than an artist occupied by his favorite employment. So what is he saying there? It was difficult. It was a difficult experience. Okay, it wasn't all, he wasn't always motivated. Okay, and so he mentions here anxiety. So there's a feeling of anxiety on his part. Okay. Every night I was oppressed by a slow fever. So it affects him physically. So it affects him emotionally in that he suffers from anxiety. It affects him physically. Right, where he actually says here, I was oppressed by a slow fever, and I became nervous to a most painful degree. Look at the choice of words there. Right? Fever, painful. The fall of a leaf startled me. Right, so that means his senses were so alert, but more alert. What did he become? Paranoid, yes. So he's suffering from anxiety, paranoia, and physical fevers. Right. And I shunned my fellow creatures as if I had been guilty of a crime. Right, I shunned my fellow creatures as if I had been guilty of a crime. So he becomes isolated. He alienates himself from his family. Right. Sometimes I grew alarmed at the wreck I perceived that I had become. So do you see all the emotive words that you need to pick up on here? Fever, painful, become a wreck, shunned. Right, shunned means, what are some of the other words for alienated, isolated? Ostracized. Anyone know that word? Ostracized, excommunicated, abandoned, marginalized. Okay, so have several words that you can use that you can use it intermittently in an essay. Because if you're talking about this topic in an essay, it's going to be a bit boring for the lecturer if you are only using marginalized throughout the essay or using isolated throughout the essay. Vary your terminology, okay? All right, that answers question 2. Then go to question 3. Once his task is accomplished, Frankenstein looks upon his creation. Describe his reaction. Do you think that his reaction is appropriate? Right. Sorry. I want you to please add in for me on page 11. There's an additional quotation that you can use. You can use it for question 2 and question 3. It is in the second paragraph, and it's the third sentence, third line in the second paragraph. And it starts off, for this I had deprived myself of rest and health. Would you say that answers question 2 as well? Yes. So highlight that, and then on your separate sheet of paper write 2, please. Question 2. Question 2, second paragraph, line 3, page 11. That's for your notes now. Okay.